Last night, Leafs coach Mike Babcock finally got the boot. Now, the big question is, was this a deserved firing? Now, for starters, Dubas and Babs were never really on the same page. Something you really want to have there is, you want to have the same system in mind when you're a GM to a head coach. So that was, problem number one. And you look at the team, obviously people had high expectations. They made playoffs 3 consecutive years. They was bounced every single time in the first round. Again, a big problem when you got them high expectations. How many years in a row do you go with the same coach before you say that enough's enough? We can't get past the first round. We're going to try somebody else. He was a guy that was heavily scrutinized for how much he was playing his star players. Were they not getting enough ice time? And that's obviously something worth scrutinizing when you have all of that money in guys like Matthews, guys like Marner, guys like Tavares. You expect those guys to be playing 20 minutes tonight. So you see the frustrations there, and it appeared that he had lost the trust of the locker room, which of course is the red flag of all red flags. So you can certainly see the reason why this guy did deserve to be walked out the door. But man, would I be lying if I didn't believe the media played a role in this one? Of course he lost the locker room. A player couldn't turn on his phone without every Toronto media outlet bashing on their coach for some reason or another. It was easy to put doubt in their head. After seeing some of the straight ruthless things people were saying about Babcock and the straight personal attack after personal attack, telling this guy he needs to die, his life's useless, he's an arrogant prick and all this, he's a selfish, I couldn't believe some of the things, like, man. Even after being fired, and this stuff was coming from verified and popular media accounts to boot. Like, man, I feel terrible for anyone that has to coach this team. Sure, everyone's critical of their coaches, their job-related decisions, but to just completely cross the line like some of these Toronto media places were by like a mile and a half, it was something else to see, to say the least. But let's look at some stats. Let's look at some stats before we jump into conclusion that it's all Babcock's fault, as it seems to be the case here. Tampa Bay currently has less points than Toronto. Calgary's sitting at 10 and 11. In other words, why are these teams' coaches' heads not sitting on a silver platter, much like Babcock's was? Two really good teams, two teams that, you look at the end of the day and say, well, they can turn it around. Maybe their coaches have a longer leash. But then you look at the Leafs from this standpoint. Toronto is 3-7-2 without Marner or Tavares in the lineup. When both of them are in the lineup, they're 7-3-1. This team is also a team whose backup goalies who have a combined 4.69 goals against average, 872 save percentage, and they haven't won a game all year. Now, 95% of the time, this would have probably been pointed out first before blaming the coach. And it would have been a very reasonable excuse to not fire the coach. Because who's to blame for this stuff? Who's to blame that they can't afford a backup goalie that's solid? Who's to blame that this team has no depth, minus Tavares, minus Marner? When one of these guys go down, they don't have the depth. Who's to blame for that? Who signed these contracts? I'll answer that question for you. It's Kyle Dubas. This guy went out there, he gave every single one of these players all the money in the world that they wanted, had no second thoughts about it. Like, oh, let's just build a super powerhouse top 2 lines, powerhouse offense, and we'll just outscore everybody every single night. Well, you see what happens when you don't outscore them. We're seeing 3.43 goals against per game compared to 3.04 last season. We're seeing 3.3 goals for this season compared to 3.49 goals against last season. Now, there's obviously multiple avenues you can go down on that road of why those stats are where they are. I find it very interesting. I think it's a segue into blaming Dubas down the road, because you look at it and look at resumes. Let's play the resume game. What does Kyle Dubas have on his resume? In his professional NHL managerial career, this guy has never tasted anything out of the first round. I mean, his biggest accomplishment was being on a management team that acquired Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner in drafts. Opposed to Babcock, who's had numerous winning seasons. He's got a Stanley Cup to his name. But I think it's just one of those cases where you look back and you say, they're got to give Dubas his chance. It wasn't the Dubas guy coaching the team. We brought it up. They have different systems. This is going to be his chance. What's this team going to do in the next year, year and a half, 2 years? Now that he's got a guy that he wants running this team, running a system that he wants, at least assumedly that's what's going to be happening here. But I mean, sure, you go back to the whole, the reason you want to see Babcock gone because they can't get out of the first round. But any non-Toronto fan will tell you this team isn't built for playoffs. They don't have the physical grittiness that other teams possess to make a deep run. They don't have the depth the other teams have to make a deep run. Again, who's to blame for that? Who's to blame that they have to go out there and try to find as many guys as possible on entry-level contracts, as many guys as possible they can pick up for $1 million and a half, because they don't have the cap space, because they have it wrapped into 4 guys on the offense? At the end of the day, sure, walk Babcock out the door. I agree, I can get behind it, but if this team has Stanley Cup aspirations, it has far deeper problems than Babcock. Don't get me wrong, they have one of the most talented teams in the entire league. It's just not built for a playoff run, period.